Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you find latest album reviews. You can find our band interviews, and you can find live coverage of the content that we get. I've been pretty busy as of late. I've been posting 5 days a week, so if you missed out on anything on the channel, make sure to subscribe. Hit that bell. You'll get notified of when any video of mine comes out. Plan on doing some more album reviews. I'll probably wind up doing a live stream maybe this weekend to catch up on the ones I missed out on. I'm going to be doing Ender Shikari's newest record, and then a handful of others for the following week and into the end of this month. So keep your eyes peeled. Got some really cool content coming. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Pulse's newest record, Speak It Into Existence. We talked about this record a little bit in the most current interview I did with them about a couple months ago, and we were just kind of like on the base level, at least I was kind of on the base level of knowing about this record. I know they didn't want to kind of, talk about a bunch of things. They did mention who one of the main features was on this record, who we'll be talking about in later portions of the song, but I was very interested in this one. I came in kind of at the tail end of their last record when I first interviewed them, so I'm kind of glad that I was able to get this one early. Shout outs to Kevin for sending me this one early. I'm glad I'm getting it out on release day so you guys can enjoy that. And for those of you watching now, make sure to go check it out. Links are in the description to find out how Pulse is. But I'm gonna go through each track, give you my thoughts and opinions on it, go through some pros and cons, and then finish it out with an overall rating. So the first track, the title track, Speak It Into Existence, and really this takes no time to get acquainted with everybody listening to it. I kind of went into this record a little bit blind. I did listen to Louisiana's Purchase just for, listening to it as, to do the interview. And it wasn't necessarily just because I did enjoy the track, but I really love going into records kind of blind, where I don't listen to any of the singles and I kind of go into it with like a fresh perspective on the record. It really depends on the band, but I really wanted to try to do it on this one just because they're just such a unique band, and so I wanted to see what my take would be on it. But I do like the back and forth between Danny and Caleb. I thought it was really well done. I think Danny's vocals really just cut through the mix super well, and while he's no longer in the band, I feel like he has definitely made his mark on this record for sure, as well as Caleb. I knew some of the stuff of Pulses when I first interviewed them, and then I really got more acquainted with their stuff now, and to see them kind of progress in sound and stuff like that is very interesting. And I think if you're a longtime fan of their band, I at least hope that you would carry over and listen to this record. But I love the guitar riffs between Matt and Caleb. I think adding Matt on prior to, I remember our first interview, I think is just really well done. I think both Caleb and Matt are excellent guitar players. So to show them off in their own respective forms, I think is really tight. And the way that they kind of switch off lead parts is very interesting. It's very reminiscent to me of like Hail the Sun. I know that Arik and Shane kind of share their guitar parts as well too. So I always appreciate that, being a guitar player myself. It's something I try to pick out a little bit more in depth because it's something that I'm more familiar with, but I feel like some of the parts are just again really well done. While despite this kind of being more on the slower-ish side, I think they allow the song to focus on like the core melodies and stuff like that, which is definitely nice. I also think that David and Kevin really hold down like the low end portion of it, i.e. being the drums and the bass. But overall, this track didn't have anything that particularly stood out to me that was just like, oh my God. But I also think at the same point, it was just super solid from start to finish. There wasn't like any sort of hiccups. It just felt very natural, and I think it's a good way to kind of ease everybody into the record. It's not like super over the top, where if this was the first song that they listened to, it doesn't feel like, oh my God, like what am I getting into? It feels it feels natural. And so I really do appreciate this track for what it is and kind of being the opener track to the record. So we're going to move into track number 2, the track that I mentioned earlier, Louisiana's Purchase. This is the first single that they released. They released a music video for it, which is very hilarious, especially towards the end, which I'll talk about in a second. But this track is super funky. I still believe this one is one of the better tracks off of this record. And I think it's just because of this mesh of different genres. And I also feel like just the callback to like DGD Happiness Era. I love that record. That is by far my favorite DGD record. So to hear kind of that stronger influence from them, and I know that they pull a lot from different swancore bands, which by the way, you should check out the swancore article on New Fury. They did a great job of that too. But and I know that Pulses was mentioned on it as well. And this one does have that sort of happiness vibe to it. I think, like, Don't Call Dave. Those are songs that I think of like when I'm listening to this track. Not directly related, but I feel like there's this essence to it, which I really appreciate. The chorus has this really cool like reverby sound on like Caleb's vocals. I think they really did something interesting that isn't just like run of the mill, like, just have like, a little bit of auto-tune, some chorus, some like delay, some reverb. And I feel like they really kind of amped it up just a little bit more to make it just more interesting and not just run of the mill, which I appreciate. I also appreciate the layers. I think the way that they are kind of able to structure out the tracks and have this real depth to them is really great. And in a track like this, where they kind of incorporate a little bit of trap, like a little bit of pop, a little bit of hip hop here and there, it needs that sort of like diversity to it. So I really do appreciate that as well. In the last chorus, like I had mentioned earlier, just literally moments ago, it does have that sort of trap pop hip hop type beat to it, and just the way that they're able to kind of mix those two sounds together is really well done. I know that they have spoken to large extent on how they've been able to kind of fuse like hip hop rap into kind of what like the swancore, post-hardcore, stuff like that, alternative music. So they just find a great blend of it. And as I mentioned before, there's this really cool kind of like dance party-esque beat. The synths are really tight. I think it was one of the coolest like outro portions of a track I've heard in a very long time, and it just gets you hyped. I don't know what about this song just speaks to me, no pun intended. I just feel like I feel like this one just is extremely well done, and definitely one you should go give a listen to, because you can go check it out now. I mean, you can't check out the whole record, but go check out this one too. So we're gonna move into track number 3, which is Sometimes Why. This one features a Max Bemis of Say Anything, which, by the way, such a great feat. I think I know that they had again spoken about it in the interview, but it was cool to hear him, because I haven't heard his music in a very long time, and so for me it was kind of like a happy accident listening to these tracks and being like, yeah, that's Max Bemis on the track. That's kind of dope. But getting back to the song, I love the sort of like happy sort of major vibe it has going on. It has definitely more of a major chord phrasing to it. And so I feel like it plays off of that sort of vibe as well. And I also like just how each song has been so unique, and they don't sound like familiar to each other. Like, they obviously have the connection of being on the same record, but they don't feel like, okay, this is like this song, like, but like a little bit extra, or they added this into it. It does genuinely feel different each track going through and listening to it. They don't feel like they kind of like bleed together or mesh together, which is always cool. I like that Caleb really kind of expanded his vocals in this track. The way that he's able to express his range has been really phenomenal to see, whether it be kind of more on the low end or like kind of more melodic nature, but also going a little bit more harder and having to hit the higher kind of notes. I think his level of expression has been turned up for sure. And I like the little sudden switch up at the 1 minute and 8 second mark. I don't know if it's like a tempo change or something like that, or maybe like a rhythm change, but something happens here that just kind of throws me off, but I really enjoy it. And I think every time that I've gone back and listened to this portion of the song, it still gets me. So if that's any indication of how cool it is, I feel like that's definitely one of many reasons. But if you came for the name drop, Max Bemis, he comes in at around the 1 minute and 41 second mark to around the 2 minutes and 32 second marks, which is a pretty large feature for as my voice cracks. It's a pretty large feature as per being Say Anything such a decently huge band in the scene. And so to have his voice on there, it just has that classic like Max Bemis vibe to it. He doesn't no Johns. He really does not. He just does what he wants. Like it sounds like Max Bemis, and I appreciate that. And again, I was really surprised at how well it worked in this track. To be honest, I was unsure of how that was going to sound. As cool as when I was in the interview and talking to them, I was like, yeah, Max Bemis is tight, but I just didn't know how they were going to work him into a Pulses track, and I was delightfully surprised at how well it worked out. So shouts to you guys, you did a great job. And shouts to Josh Unit, of course. I think he did a great job on this too. But I think the real unsung hero is Kevin in this track. Just his way to kind of transition fills and kind of transition in portions of the track, not only pertaining to this one, but a lot of the tracks off of this record. I think he does a great job of kind of facilitating the transitions so they all go out smoothly, which is what a transition is, obviously. And so I feel like that he does a great job of kind of continuing the songs, but don't kill the vibe if it's already there. So I think, again, super well done, super well executed. The Max Bemis guest spot was a shock to me, but I think they really did work the Pulse's magic on it. So we're gonna move into track number 4, which is Exist Warp Break. This one is very fun. I think this is one of the weirder tracks off the record. But I like weird. I'm very about this track so much. I love the little big group number they got going on here. It's super fun. Again, it reminds me a lot of Don't Tell Dave. I think I can draw the comparisons to that without seeming like I'm an idiot, but I feel like the comparisons are, at least in my humble opinion, I feel like it is a very good comparison. I love that whole record, so for me to say something like that and to equate it to a record that I love, I think is really a great compliment. At least I can say so. You can let me know in the comments if you think it is as well. But I love the inclusion of horns. I think those are something that I was not expecting as well, but I think it works so nicely with the instrumentals, the drumming, like the kind of like rap, a little bit of screaming here and there, like kind of, it's just really diverse. I think not only instrumentally but vocally, I think it's very interesting as well. And it's easily one of my favorite tracks. I just love the big sound it produces, and just kind of the lyrical banter is very comical. I think that the way that they've been able to do it, and I feel like a lot of kind of bands stray away from it because it's just so goofy, but I loved Danny's lyrics in this track. I love the kind of just like jokey nature of it, while it being obviously a very serious song. I think it has that kind of like jokey, kind of like just fun party track, and I really enjoy this one a lot. I love the little groove part at around the 2 minutes and 22 second mark to around the 2 minutes and 50 second mark. That part goes absolutely hard, and overall really enjoyed this one a lot. Really groovy, really great party track, and I feel like even if people aren't particularly a fan of this genre, I feel like if you showed them this song, they would enjoy it. So especially if they're more into like funk and stuff, I feel like this is right up the alley. So we're gonna move into track number 5, which is Mount Midoriyama, and this features good friends of the channel, Sierra of With Sales Ahead, which I'm wearing their shirt. That was totally coincidental. Didn't wear it on purpose for this interview or review. That was terrible. I shouldn't have made that joke. But anyway, getting back to the track, first of all, gotta say, great reference, American Ninja Warrior, great television show. But I love the reference, first of all, great. Secondly, I really love how this track grooves. It's just it's just a really, they have a way of creating some really memorable grooves, and I feel like having listened to this record many times, 24/7, nonstop, you get these kind of melodies, these kind of grooves stuck in your head, and this one is one of the more memorable ones for sure. I also love the really kind of cool effects that they're using on the vocals. It just they do some really interesting stuff, and I think it makes it unique in that aspect. I also really love the bass in this track. I think that David does a fantastic job on kind of the real like really finger picked bass, and also kind of a little bit of slapping here and there, and just the grooves are phenomenal on his part. Sierra comes in at around the 2 minutes and 38-second mark to around the 2 minutes and 3-second mark, and then she also comes back in later on at the 2 minutes and 30-second mark to about the end. And it just, to me, it feels weird because we live close to each other, remotely close to each other, and I'm just so familiar with them, with her being in With Sails Ahead, and obviously her vocal style in With Sails Ahead. And I appreciate the changes that she was able to do with it. I think in the first verse, or the first portion that she's in, I feel like there's a little bit of restraint, which is good. And if it was just that, I would be a little bit more worried. I thought she would have put in a little bit more effort. And then the second time she comes in, she goes hard. I feel like that second take in that second portion of the track, I think was way better. It was way better executed. I can speak English than the first time. I think the first time is just a little bit too mellow for me. Whenever I hear kind of a guest spot, I'm hoping for a little bit more energy. But overall, I think it fits with the vibe. It's not she just going hard and the track's real melodic and soft. I feel like that's a little bit much, but if there's kind of a build to it, there's a little bit of energy behind it, I would hope that the kind of guest spot would bring in that energy to kind of maximize a really big chorus. So which the chorus in this track is absolutely huge. So I was a little bit surprised upon the first portion of the guest spot, but the second time that she had came in, killed it. So kind of 50-50 on it. I love Sierra, so I feel like I'm being a little... I shouldn't have made that joke. I don't know why I make these dad jokes, but I choose to, and so I will rest in my grave knowing that I made this terrible terrible dad joke. But anyway, getting back to the tracks, we're gonna move into track number 7, which is Good Vibes Only. Zuckerberg Watching. I don't even know to tell you. I'm so speechless on how hard this track just goes. I just want to look at you, Pulses. You did a fantastic job with this one. You didn't have to go this hard. You really didn't. And I appreciate that you went this hard for this track, but this is awesome. By far my favorite. When I listened to this record, when Kevin had sent me this over and I got to track 7, I can't guarantee you how many times I've listened to this track specifically, and I just love it. I think this one is my personal favorite, and I know I've kind of strayed away from picking some of my favorite tracks when I do reviews, but this one just is amazing. I love the bass line from Dave. I think he's really kind of he just rings through my soul. It's just something about those bass lines that just hit, and then everything else kind of takes my soul away. The guitars, the vocals, the drums. It's just something about this one that just, every time I listen to it, I go into this ethereal space, and I love it. Super funky, super catchy, easily one of the catchiest songs off the record, and I think that they were definitely not kidding when they said that this track brings the good vibes. 100% great job. I don't even know. I think for me, Dave's got to be the MVP of this track. He just rips it. The bass lines were filthy. Just kind of the finger picks, the slapping. Oh my god, it was just, this one's fantastic. If there's anything you have to take away from this particular song in general, is just that this one's fantastic. So go give this one a listen. So we're gonna move into track number 8, which is Don't Say Anything, Just Retweet, or RT. And this one is very interesting. The genre meshing is very interesting throughout this entire record, but this one feels the most interesting. I get kind of an Issues vibe at around the 32-second mark to around the 1 minute, to around the 45-second mark. And I think it has a lot to do with like kind of the electronics and the arrangement of it. But I really enjoyed that portion of the track and the song in general. I do like the little social media plug in the middle of the record. I think that's pretty G. I'm not gonna lie. You did a great job, Caleb, with that slight plug, the slight flex. I really like the nice little sax solo at around the 3 minutes and 35-second mark to around the 3 minutes and 50-second mark. And I would say the MVP of this track is definitely Danny. His vocals just cut through the mix super well. His screams are really just, well cut, and they feel like they just fit super well into the track. And I know I just repeated myself, but it really is true. The way that he sits in these songs have been really fantastic, and I think it has a lot to do with how Josh Unit kind of put it together. But really enjoyed this one. So we're gonna move it into track number 9, which is Rebel, the Mightiest Cat. And this one is much heavier than I was expecting from the band. I think I had kind of the same sort of like shock value as I did with Good Vibes. With this track, it's a little bit harder. It has more of a post-hardcore feel to it, and this is just this gnarly breakdown around the 23-second mark to around the 56-second mark. And it's been super interesting, especially for this one, because there's just it feels like there's multiple genres happening on this one, and the kind of genre bends, the tempo changes, they were all stuff that I wasn't really expecting from a track like this, but they really definitely took it in an interesting way. And I like that they went heavier with this. I feel like a lot of the tracks pull from more of the kind of hip hop and like trap and like pop sort of vibes, but this one feels a little bit more kind of leaning into their post-hardcore roots. It almost has reminiscent vibes of like Secret Band, even kind of like a little bit more heavier Hail the Sun, those sorts of vibes, which they're both bands that I love. So I when they had a heavier track like this one, I was stupid on board with this one. And this one, definitely, if you're about the heavy boys, this is the one for you. So we're gonna move into track number 10, which is Plastiglomerate. I'm pretty sure I said that right. I probably butchered the hell out of it because I'm not very good at doing this. If this is your first time in the channel, I'm not very good at this. If you've been a long time fan, you already know I'm not good at this, so I figured I'd let you know about that. But this one is one of the most current singles. They released a music video for it, which was very cool. But this one was very interesting to me. It has this sort of Hail the Sun vibe to it, but also it's very melodic. I think Caleb and Matt sound really fantastic together. Matt kind of doing more of the kind of softer, higher register stuff, and Caleb doing kind of more of the bass level melody and stuff like that. And I also love their blend of melodicness and heaviness. I feel like a lot of the tracks kind of suffer with being heavy and having that melodic nature, but the switch off in tracks like these work out really well. And it's able to utilize their skills as a band. It doesn't feel like it's just one heavy track like the one that preceded this one, but it also doesn't feel like like a Louisiana Purchase, or it doesn't sound like Sometimes Why. There's really an identity to all these tracks, and I appreciate it. And I also feel like, like the heavy juxtaposed with the melodicness is always a really great idea. And I really enjoyed the bridge, especially the bridge guitar lick going on. I think that was really well done. And I think Caleb just sounds absolutely fantastic vocally on these tracks, more specifically in the bridge. And I just really dig the cut throughout the entire record. I think the vocal lines just are really well put together. They don't feel like they're just like sitting below kind of a good instrumental. Everything feels like it has a purpose to it, and when the vocals need to speak a little bit more, they come out a little bit more, which is something I really greatly appreciate. We're gonna move into track number 11, which is Big Mood, and this one features Joey Lancaster of Belay. I'm again, it's very late and I'm tired, so if I'm pronunciating these wrong, I'm really sorry. Um, but let me just say, I love Joey Lancaster. Joey, I miss you, buddy. And it's so cool to see two bands that I thoroughly enjoy, on a track together. So when I think even more so, like I like Max Bemis, but I love Joey more. So for me, this is a home run for me. I love both of these bands, so to have them both on one track is really well executed. I've really missed Joey's vocals. I haven't heard him with a new Belly track, so Joe, if you want to send me the new Belly record, you can just send it to my email. But I love the feature. I think they really complement each other well. He does all the choruses, which the first chorus is around the 25-second mark to around the 48-second mark. And I think that his vocals really complement the sort of softer nature of the choruses. And, I think it also works well in comparison to the rest of the song. If he was like a little bit more energetic, I think would be a little bit better. I think the way that he would have switched up a chorus would have been nice. Like if there was just maybe like a little bit more punch to it. I love his lower register. I love the way that he's able to kind of like convey that sort of softer emotion. But I would have loved to hear something a little bit more punchy, especially in maybe the last chorus. I think that would have been a cool send off. And also, I think layered wise, the vocals are really awesome. The choruses, like I said, sound huge. I think there's definitely some like overlaying, like kind of like vocal harmonies going on there, which is definitely nice. But I like that they poured a lot of the energies into the verses, I mean, and also just kind of keeping that sort of energy. I think that Caleb or Matt's vocals, I think just the way that they're able to kind of balance out Danny's vocals, which are a little bit more aggressive, they have a little bit more punch to them. It just works well in that sort of counterbalance of the two. But I also really love the high energy of this track. It definitely feels, very Pulses related. And I think instrumentally, it's one of my favorites as well. Not being kind of like too crazy, but I think the way that it is arranged, the track structured, I think it's, for me, one of those underrated put together tracks. So we're gonna move into the last track number 12, which is Graduation Day. And this one to me feels like the Black Sheep is unlike any of the other unlike any of the other songs on the record. And I think if I had to guess, it was written towards the end of the writing cycle of this record. It just feels that way. I think just instrumentally, I think it feels a little bit not, I wanted to say Danny-less, but it definitely has less Danny in it, if that makes sense. And so it feels a little bit more like, I wouldn't say necessarily the direction that they're going for, but to kind of prove that if they don't have screaming vocals, which I know Matt does some screaming, that they would still be well off, because this one feels very cohesive. It feels very thought out, methodical, and I really appreciate that. There's some really interesting elements in terms of the sound. It has this really kind of big sort of ethereal vibe to it, especially with the kind of Kevin's drumming. There's a lot of reverb. There's a lot of space to it. I think the guitars really are the only thing that don't have like any sort of, there's probably like a little bit of reverb to just kind of make the notes last a little bit longer and be a little bit more fluid, but I think otherwise it really isn't like, it's not effects laden, but the drums and everything else feels very effects driven in terms of what they use and stuff like that. I also really loved Caleb's vocals in this track as well. I think the way that he's able to kind of vocalize and cut through, literally the last track off the record, I think was really well done. I also think that it's really a unique track. I think it's one that they can add to their repertoire of music writing, and the guitar work, I feel like being at kind of the center, I think really rounds out a track like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be vocals, but I think the way that they did it on this track, I think was very interesting, and I appreciate kind of the creative move to do something like this instead of maybe going more of the traditional route. So we're gonna go through some pros and cons. One big con, I would love for them to kind of utilize Matt more. I don't think that he was too much on this record, and Matt, if you'd like to comment, I'd like to hear what you have to say. But I would love to hear kind of more like harmonies between him and Caleb. I think that would be really well done. It doesn't have to be over the top. You aren't the Eagles, but I feel like for myself, like, it would be interesting to see how well their voices match together, and just to see, what melodies and what tracks and future tracks that they'd be able to come up with, like kind of an idea of like that. Pros, I think, is super catchy. A lot of these tracks are really well put together, really well mixed, mastered, so if everything feels like it has its sort of place to it. Genre meshing, I think they do a really good job of kind of blending and kind of folding in with a typical kind of like post-hardcore emo sort of sound, but then you add electronics onto it, or you add like hip-hop, or you add like some sort of different genre that will bring a lot of energy to it. I think that's great. I think all of the features were really wonderful as well. Obviously, shouts to Whistles Ahead, shouts to Bele, shouts to Say Anything. I think all the features are really well done. My personal favorite, Joey, and then I'd probably say Sierra, then I'd say Max, just because I'm not that big of a Say Anything fan. So to me, as much as I'm sure it was very cool for them to do that, to me it didn't feel like as important to me as like Joey. But overall, I think it was really a great, fun experience. It was one that I think you have to listen to the full record in order to get an idea of it. With songs that are kind of a little bit more out there, I personally feel like you have to listen to it from front to back. It just has that sort of weird vibe to it. And, again, I hope you'll go check it out. But my overall rating for Pulse's Speak It Into Existence, I'm going to be giving it a 9.5 out of 10. They really did a lot of different things that I feel like post-hardcore bands right now aren't doing, especially more so in like the sort of swancore era of music. They're allowing their influences to kind of bleed into the music that they're writing, whether it be like kind of more of a hip-hop style beat or trap beat, or they have something that's a little bit more like pop polished. I think it is very intelligent the way that they've been going about it so far, and so I wanted to obviously give them a shout for that. But let me know in the comments what you think about this record. If you agree with me, if you disagree, I'd love to hear you have your comments on it. As well as that, go pick it up. The record is out today, so it's one that I feel like you should go give a listen to when you have the opportunity to. And if you enjoyed this interview or review, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to hit that bell so you guys get notified of when everything comes out. Have plenty of more content to come for the rest of this week. So hopefully you guys will go check it out when you get the chance. Like I said, my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace.